Humans were banned from the battlefield not for their brutality, but for their terrifying efficiency. When the galaxy called them back, hoping for restraint, it got a nightmare instead. They didn't fight for victory. They became the warning that echoes even after the planet was erased. They were never defeated. They became legend. Now, memory itself is the most dangerous weapon they ever wielded. Stay with us if you want to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The war was supposed to be clean. That's what the Galactic Accord had promised when they outlawed humanity from frontline combat 2 centuries ago. No blood, no chaos, no primitive carnage. Just drones, AI fleets, and surgical precision. The rules were strict. They had to be. No species wanted another Erebus. Erebus was the last time humans were allowed to fight. A campaign so devastating that the skies over Braic burned for weeks. Entire oceans had evaporated, 3 species vanished into radioactive ash. No one spoke of it anymore. Not officially, but in the shadows of alien diplomacy, a phrase still lingered. If you want to win, don't call the humans. If you want everyone dead, do. But history had a way of repeating itself. Captain Silas Wren stood at the edge of the drop bay, armor heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't worn it in decades. Not since Earth had signed the Passive Participation Pact. Advisors, engineers, tacticians, never warriors. But that boundary had crumbled the moment the Zarn Dominion launched their first assault on the Triricor Peace Nexus. Neutral ground, diplomatic sanctuary. Gone. 2 moons vaporized. 16 ambassadors from 16 worlds reduced to dust. The Accord hesitated, of course. Committees. Loop's moral clauses. The bureaucracy of peace. And in their hesitation, the Zarn took 3 more systems. So Earth was contacted. Quietly. Desperately. 1 battalion. No civilians. Limited engagement. Silas understood the message for what it truly was. Containment was the word they used. Vengeance was what they meant. The drop bay hissed open. 10 soldiers entered. Ghosts in armor. The last of the Earthborn. Trained before the bans. Forged in silence. Men and women who carried in them the kind of war that scarred planets. Run. Came a voice over the comm Commander Drex. Reptori. Once a diplomat who wouldn't share air with a human, now begging. We've lost orbital control. Zarn cruisers decimated our defense grid. Delve Prime will fall in 6 hours if the zone isn't cleared. Wren's response was devoid of comfort. We're en route. No promises. No hope. Just the cold certainty of movement. As the troop ship screamed through Delve Prime's atmosphere, Silas activated his visor. Smoke filtered into digital clarity. Plasma burns scorched the surface. Wrecks littered the valley below like the bones of giants. Insects swarmed the debris. Zarn soldiers, spindly, armored, each armed with heat rifles. Drop zone clear in 5, the pilot called. Wren turned to his squad. No prisoners. No broadcasts. No survivors. Make them remember. The floor dropped. They fell like meteors. Boots hit soil, and something ancient inside Wren awoke. For years they told him that rage was a flaw. That human instinct was a sickness. But on this day, under this blood-orange sky, it was a gift. The first Zarn didn't even have time to scream. His torso cleaved by a tungsten blade. The second managed to raise his rifle before his chest burst from a sonic charge. The others ran. But it was far too late. The humans weren't here to fight. They were here to unleash. Kill confirmations flooded Wren's HUD. His unit moved like wraiths, silent, methodical, brutal. Every shot a message. Every corpse a warning. High above, alien commanders watched in silence. Remembering. Because the battlefield didn't forget. And neither did the humans. By dawn, Delve Prime's valley was silent. Not the silence of peace, but of horror. Smoke coiled over a charred Zarn outpost. Now little more than twisted metal and scorched meat. Sergeant Marlowe stepped over a twitching corpse. Damn, he muttered. We've been grounded too long. Wren said nothing. His visor swept across the ridge. Movement. 10 clicks out. Reinforcements. A swarm. Marlowe grinned as he reloaded. Thought they were supposed to surrender after the first strike. Isn't that the Zarn way? They don't know us yet, Wren replied. But they will. In orbit above Delve Prime, aboard the Coalition flagship Unity's Roar, Ambassador Drex watched the live feed in mute disbelief. The humans moved like no other species, too fast, too coordinated, too deliberate. They aren't just fast, murmured Admiral Sheetarn of the Kirathi, his eyes wide and glowing with tactical overlays. They're efficient. They don't waste motion. They don't hesitate. They don't care. Drex swallowed hard. We were told they'd operate under strict command structure. Controlled engagement. This is a massacre. General Zetarn, his tendrils coiled in tension, added grimly. No. The mistake was thinking we could control them. Below, the second Zarn wave descended, massive transport crawlers kicking up plumes of scorched soil. Hundreds of troops spilled out, armored, clawed, howling for blood. But the humans didn't retreat. They advanced. Wren's voice buzzed through the comms. Shield line. V formation. Funnel them. Classic Terran siege maneuver. Force the enemy into a narrow lane. then crushed them. Perimeter mines detonated. The canyon exploded with heat and black blood. Limbs, torsos, shrapnel rained down in an unholy storm. Private Kira, young and still green, fired a clean shot that passed through two Zarn skulls. Her hands shook. "They just keep coming," she whispered. "They'll stop," Corporal Rios answered, calmly reloading. "Once they realize what we are." "No survivors," Ren ordered. "Burn everything. I want fear spreading faster than orders." The order was clear. And it wasn't a tactic. It was a statement. Deep in the ravaged canyon, surrounded by craters and flame, Ren stood over a barely breathing Zarn officer. Its exoskeleton cracked, fluids leaking. "You thought we were stories," Ren said, removing his helmet, letting the alien see his eyes. Eyes that had watched cities die. "You thought we were extinct." The Zarn gurgled something. Half plea, half prayer. "You remember now." Ren pulled the trigger. In the Zarn command chamber beneath Delve's crust, General Thur watched the loss reports roll in. Holograms pulsed red. Entire divisions gone. No distress calls. Just nothing. "They're not soldiers," an aide whispered, face pale. Thur bared his fangs. "No. They're worse." He tapped into surveillance. A lone human walking through the burning ruins, weapon resting casually at his side. Like a myth. A demon. A lesson forgotten too long. "The skies burn," the general said quietly. And they walked through it. And burn it did. Delve Prime's heavens turned crimson, not from sunset, but from wreckage raining down. Vaporized cruisers became artificial auroras. Ash drifted like snow. The humans didn't stop. In the shattered remains of a Zarn forward base, Ren studied a flickering holomap. "Intel says they're rallying 2 sectors east," Marlowe said, pointing. 30,000 troops. Zarn, mercs, deserters. Even Krailborn mutants. "They're scared," Ren said. "Throwing everything at something they don't understand." "They understand fine," Rios added darkly. "That's why they're panicking." Kira sat nearby, cleaning her rifle. Her hands still trembled. "Sir, why did they ban us?" "I heard stories, but was it really that bad?" Rand didn't speak at first. Then he walked over to a console. Loaded a file labeled Erebus Campaign, classified. Footage played. Grainy at first. Then sharp. Earth forces storming bunkers. Orbital strikes not on military targets, on cities. Children screaming. Flesh-stripping drones. Chemical agents designed not to kill, but to undo life. "I was there," Ren said. "We didn't fight to win. We fought to end." Kira's breath caught. "We weren't banned because we're monsters. We were banned because monsters look like amateurs next to us." Across the galaxy, the headlines exploded. Humans flattened Delve Prime Sector. Zarn in full retreat. Treaty rules violated. But one whispered headline dominated dark chambers. "They're back." On the diplomatic moon of Karshur. Chaos reigned. Over a dozen species filled the emergency chamber, ambassadors, generals, crisis analysts, arguing, shouting, denying. The footage of Delve Prime's destruction looped in silent horror above the central table. Cities turned to ash. Zarn legions reduced to bloodstains. Human silhouettes walking through flame and smoke like ancient reapers. "They lied," screamed Minister Yava of the Lortec. "They promised us restraint." "They were restrained," Drek said, voice tight. "You don't know what they're capable of." "That wasn't full deployment. That was a whisper." "Shern," another delegate barked. "You once called Earth a necessary ally. Still believe that?" Shern stood slowly, staring at the footage, Ren's face behind the battle visor. "We made them believe they were tame," he said bitterly. "Made them ashamed of what they were. But we forgot one thing." "What?" snapped someone. "They don't fight for conquest," Shern said. "Or for survival. Humans fight like they're punishing the universe for ever daring to test them." Back on Delve Prime, the third Zarn assault began under cover of a sulfur storm. Thick, choking winds. Plasma lightning. Heat that buckled armor. They thought the humans would falter. They thought wrong. The Earthborn fought blind. Not with sensors. Not with advanced tech. With instinct. Memory. Sound and vibration. They struck from shadows, blades flashing, rifles barking thunder into the dust. Ron was at the center of it. Silent. Inevitable. He moved like death had borrowed his armor. Blades flashed in each hand, one for history, one for vengeance. 2 hits pierced his chest plate. He didn't slow down. Marlowe lost an arm in a blast. Blood sprayed, bone cracked, but he still took 6 Zarn with him before collapsing. Rios dragged a wounded ally through fire, eyes blank, skin blistered. Kira, no longer the rookie, laughed as she jammed a dead pack into the core of a Zarn crawler and leapt free just as it erupted into flame and screaming metal. It wasn't madness. It was legacy. When the storm passed, only wreckage remained. And one ship, limping away, broadcasting a message of terror. The humans are back. The Zarn didn't send that signal to allies. They sent it as a warning. Within days, 10 systems declared neutrality. Mercenary guilds disbanded overnight. In every smoky corridor of power, one question echoed with mounting dread. Who let them out? Silas Wren sat in the shattered remains of the Zarn's forward bastion. Helmet off. Blood crusted across his cheek. Behind him, Kira knelt near a pile of scorched drones, cleaning her rifle in silence. "Did they know yet?" she asked, her voice dry, quiet. Rin didn't look at her. Who? The ones in orbit. The ones who sent us. Thinking we'd play nice. He inhaled through his teeth, the air still reeking of ozone and death. They'll know soon enough. The third wave had been annihilated. No survivors. No weapons left intact. The Earth itself bore their message, blackened trenches, shattered bunkers, ash in the air thick enough to taste. It wasn't war anymore. It was a warning. Far above, on the Coalition flagship Eternal Consensus, Earth's diplomatic corps stood motionless in the central chamber of the Accord. You violated Article 9, bellowed Ambassador Trek of the Veladin. Your soldiers are prohibited from direct warfare. They weren't deployed, Earth's envoy replied, calm as polished steel. They volunteered. That's a technicality. No, the human leaned forward. That's humanity. You gave us rules. We obeyed. Until you begged for help. Now you're angry that help has a cost. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. You don't ban a species from war because they're unstable, the envoy said, straightening his cuffs. You ban them because they're too good at it. A voice from the far end of the hall spoke, soft but venomous. We should have destroyed Earth when we had the chance. The envoy didn't blink. You tried. Now you remember why that was the last mistake you ever made. Down on Delve Prime, another shift had begun. New offers flooded in from the Accord, reinforcements, orbital cannons, drone regiments. Earthborn Command declined most. We don't need an army, Rin told them flatly. We're the weapon. Satellite scans showed enemy fleets gathering for a massive push. The largest mobilization in a century. Over 500,000 troops. Biomech horrors. Neural hounds. Quantum warforms. They're throwing everything at us, Marlowe said, now fitted with a mechanical arm already stained with blood. They think it'll matter. They think this is about winning, Kira added. Ren smirked. It's not. She glanced at him. Then what's it about? He looked across the scorched field. It's about making sure no one ever forgets us again. Darkness fell once more. And across the stars, Zarn communications crackled with the same coded phrase, whispered in terror. The humans are not soldiers. They are war, wearing skin. The Coalition named it Operation Black Dusk, the largest multi-species offensive in living memory. 80 warships. Over 600,000 troops. Biomechanical neurosarmors, plasma-shielded devastators, planetary disruptors. All descending on Delve Prime with a single objective. Erase the humans. Not defeat. Not contain. Erase. Aboard the Zarn Dreadnought on Maker's Will, War Council lights painted the command chamber in hues of dread. Holograms pulsed with tactical overlays, each red dot a human position, each line a proposed strike pattern. A dozen generals and warlords leaned over the table like butchers plotting over a carcass. They're outnumbered. Undersupplied. No reinforcements inbound, General Thur snarled. We strike now and bury them beneath a mountain of corpses. Across the table, a silent Kirathi elder leaned forward. His voice was as soft as frost. They won't fight to win, he said. They'll fight to make us regret standing on the same planet. Thur hissed. They bleed like anyone else. The elder met his gaze, unblinking. You mistake bleeding for breaking. Down on Delve Prime, Silas Rain stood with his squad beneath a fractured sky. The clouds parted, not with weather, but with war. Dozens of enemy ships screamed toward the surface, their shadows blotting out the dying sun. They're coming hard, Marlowe grunted, wiping soot from his brow. Orbital strikes. Heavy crawlers. Sonic splitters. The whole damn zoo. Kira looked up, then turned to Rin. You knew this was coming, didn't you? I was counting on it, he said. Counting on being surrounded? No. Counting on them being stupid enough to think it mattered. In the past 48 hours, the Earthborn had vanished from scanners. Not because they retreated, but because they prepared. Every canyon had been wired. Every riverbed mined. The cliffs seeded with seismic charges. They didn't plan to hold Delve Prime. They turned it into a weapon. The first wave dropped with precision. Sleek black pods landing in perfect formation. And then they exploded. Rigged soil. Buried plasma mines. Booby traps nested in friendly codes. Chaos erupted instantly. The elite Zarn units had barely formed ranks before their landing zones tore them apart. Panic swept through command lines. Screams, static, unanswered calls. Then a broadcast hijacked every frequency on the planet. Rin's voice, calm and cold. You should have left us in peace. What followed wasn't war. It was hell. Humans struck from shadows, silent, spectral. They didn't take positions. They erased them. Zarn squadrons were buried in sudden landslides triggered by sonic pulses. Krailborn berserkers were lured into tight caverns and incinerated via flame streamers routed through ancient exhaust vents. Orbital support tried to assist, but the humans had long ago mapped the satellite relay grid. They redirected the Zarn's own targeting systems, forcing them to bombard their own troops from orbit. The slaughter was surgical. On the first day, 30% of the strike force perished. By the second, half were in retreat. By the third, no one answered calls anymore. In the shattered husk of a Zarn command crawler, Marlowe slumped against twisted steel, clutching his side where blood soaked through his vest. Sparks sputtered from his artificial arm. You know what this feels like, he rasped. Kira crawled beside him. Face split, hair matted with ash. Don't say it. Erebus. She closed her eyes. You said not to say it. Rin sat near them, hands bloodied, eyes hollowed by memory. No, he said. Erebus was rage. Kira turned toward him, blinking through the soot. And this? Rin looked toward the distant fires. This is something worse. What's worse than rage? Rin stood slowly. The fire reflected in his eyes. Clarity. As night fell again on Delve Prime, the Coalition fleet fractured in silence. Not from orders, but because fear had taken command. Zarn crawlers turned around. Mercenary ships went dark. Warlords broke contract mid-transmission. No punishment. No court-martial. Just absence. Because the battlefield was no longer just a place. It was a message. Across neutral worlds, governments scrambled. Colonies severed ties with the Accord. Defense grids reprogrammed themselves to reject human signatures, not as enemies, but as ghosts. Even some Zarn defected, crossing lines in silence, hands raised, not in surrender, but in prayer. 2 solar cycles after the failed operation, the Galactic Accord issued an emergency alert. All personnel, avoid contact with rogue human units on Delve Prime. Do not engage. Do not approach. Do not investigate. Consider them outside command jurisdiction. It wasn't a command. It was a warning. Because Silas Wren's squad was no longer responding to Earth, or to the Accord, or to anyone. They had gone dark. And in that silence, the galaxy began to understand. The humans were not there on assignment. They were there because someone had let them out. Ash coated the eastern ridge of Delve Prime, painting the jagged rocks in shades of mourning. Silas Wren stood at its edge, his armor cracked, visor shattered, but still upright. Below him lay a valley of silence. Enemy dead piled in blackened layers, broken crawlers like skeletal machines rusting in heat that never faded. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like anything. Behind him, Kira limped across the gravel, her leg wrapped in sin fiber, face sunken with fatigue. The few remaining members of the squad moved like shades, not soldiers, quiet, stripped of everything but purpose. No reinforcements, she said, voice low. Command's not even answering anymore. Ren didn't turn. They're not going to. You think they abandoned us? He shook his head. No, they didn't abandon us. They lost control of us. Back on Earth, the truth was unavoidable. Global media was under lockdown. Defense councils convened in bunkers, arguing behind sealed doors. Protesters flooded the megacities, demanding accountability, demanding answers. Why were the soldiers still active? Why hadn't they been recalled? But beneath the political chaos lay the question no one dared to speak aloud. What if they don't want to come back? Far across the stars, in a hidden Accord think tank orbiting the Kyarzix belt, 12 species met in secret. Generals, strategists, survivors, all of them whispering. They've decimated 5 sectors, one Vorthian analyst reported, pale and twitching. We estimate less than 60 human soldiers still active on Delve Prime. Just 60. And yet we've lost over 200,000 combined. They're not soldiers, Drex said, voice hoarse. There's something we tried to bury and forgot to fear. We have to end it, General Carr snapped. Nuke the planet. Blast the soil. We can't let them survive. And when Earth responds, another asked. Carr hesitated. We hope they don't. You still don't get it, Drex muttered. They're not waiting for orders. Not anymore. They're not fighting for Earth. He looked up, eyes burning. They're fighting for something older. What? Someone whispered. Drex didn't blink. Vengeance. That night, in the remains of a collapsed dropship, Ren's squad sat around a flickering fire, the last remnants of heat from a salvaged plasma coil. They didn't speak much anymore. There was little left to say. Marlowe was gone, his final act a canyon detonation that crushed a Zarn crawler column under megatons of rock. Rios had died pulling a wounded squad mate out of a burning husk, his helmet left by the fire. Scorched and cracked. Kira cleaned her rifle in silence, one hand clutching her ribs. Her eyes were dry now. Not because she had no tears, but because she had nothing left to mourn. Why are we still here? She asked finally, the words like gravel. Ren didn't answer at first. Then he reached into his chest plate and pulled out a battered old Earth data pad. Cracked. Primitive. Still functioning. He tapped the screen. The video was grainy. Distant. A Zarn cruiser hovering over a Terran city. Fire raining down. Civilians screaming. A little girl 10, maybe, running through smoke, reaching for someone. Then light. Then nothing. That was New Amsterdam, Ren said, voice cold. Before the truce. Before they told us to bury our rage. He looked up, eyes gleaming in the firelight. They made us bury it. Bury our grief. Bury everything. Then they acted surprised when it came back up. Kira didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, a Zarn general appeared. Alone. No weapons. No guards. No pride. He walked into the human camp with hands raised, trembling, armor stripped away. You win, he said, barely louder than the wind. We'll leave. The planet is yours. Just, please stop. Ren stepped forward, slow and steady. No weapon in hand. No threat in his posture. It was never about the planet, he said. The general's mandibles quivered. Then, what do you want? Ren's voice was final. To make sure you never forget who we are. He turned his back. Walked away. Didn't kill him. Didn't need to. The galaxy was already dying from the memory alone. Delph Prime no longer looked like a war zone. It looked like a tomb. Once-green continents turned to charred ridges. Oceans boiled dry. Orbital scans showed no enemy fleets. No movement. Just echoes. The planet had become a scar carved into the fabric of the galaxy. Far above, aboard the Accord Citadel in the Lambda sector, a summit began in silence. Every major species attended. No one met each other's eyes. Delph Prime is gone, whispered a Yulon official. 250,000 lives. 46 billion in infrastructure. All to stop 52 humans. There was silence. Then, does it matter? Someone barked. They're not a unit anymore. They're an infection. Sheetarn, the Kirathi admiral who had once championed restraint, now leaned heavily on the table, hands trembling. If this spreads, if they leave Delph Prime, we won't be able to contain it. Not militarily. Not diplomatically. Not morally. Then the Ark ambassador stood. So we bury it. Bury what? Drex asked. The plan was simple. Cruel. Effective. No more failed diplomacy. No more tactical errors. No more warnings. The Accord would deploy a Gravlance prototype into Delph Prime's atmosphere. A doomsday weapon that collapsed planetary gravity wells inward, erasing the entire world from existence. No survivors. No battlefield. Just silence. They would call it an accident. A tragic end to a brutal war. A convenient erasure. But humanity was never known for letting things go as planned. Silas Rin stood in the ruins of what had once been the Zarn's strongest fortress. The walls had been split by plasma detonations, ceilings collapsed under kinetic pressure, floors cracked open by seismic charges planted during the second night assault. What remained was hollowed stone and the stink of blood, alien, human, ancient. Kira sat against a fractured column, breathing shallow, her face gaunt and bruised, ribs wrapped in scavenged scent bandage. 3 others remained. No medics. No supplies. Just grit. Just memory. Ren had intercepted the transmission only hours before. They were going to kill the planet. Not with orbital strikes. Not with troops. With something worse. The Grav Lance. The kind of weapon that didn't leave ruins, it left nothing. We're not leaving, he said, voice low, almost to himself. Kira coughed. We've already won. Let them do it. Let them bury this place. That's what they've always wanted. Ren shook his head. We don't die quietly. She looked up, and something flickered behind her eyes, not fear. Not despair. Something older. Something raw. So what now? She asked. Ren reached into the dirt beside him, uncovering an object, dusty, blackened, ancient. An Earth-era transmitter. Hardwired. No satellites. No encryption. Just raw signal. A relic from the days before Earth asked for permission to speak. He brushed off the dirt, stared at the worn symbol etched into its side, an old Earth sigil, the Delta mark. He clicked it on. This is Captain Silas Wren of Earth's last battalion. His voice echoed through open space. Unfiltered. Unrepentant. You think you can erase us? You think fire and silence will make us disappear? He stepped onto a shattered platform, staring up at the red sky. But here's the thing about humans, we never vanish quietly. We become stories. We become nightmares. You bury us, and we grow in the dark. Behind him, wind tore through the bones of the dead, rattling steel and ash. Ren looked toward the heavens. Go ahead. Kill us. Collapse the sky. But understand this, your children will wake up screaming our names. And their children will curse the day you forgot what we were. He dropped the transmitter onto the stone and walked out. No one stopped him. No one could. Hours later, the Grav Lance activated. From the orbiting Accord carrier Judgment's path, a column of light tore through the atmosphere. Silent. Impossibly bright. It pierced the sky, cracked the crust of Delph Prime like an egg under a hammer. The planet screamed. Mountains buckled. Continents collapsed. The gravity core destabilized, imploding from within. It didn't explode, it folded. Everything stone, steel, bone, memory was crushed into silence. The battlefield vanished. No debris. No fire. Just a scar in the fabric of space. In the public record, it was ruled a catastrophe. A core destabilization. An accident. To the diplomats, it was a quiet ending to a loud mistake. But to those who fought there, those who had survived the broadcasts, the reports, the footage, it was something else entirely. A mass murder. But there were no bodies left to blame. No survivors to accuse. Just silence. And fear. On a forgotten listening post near the edge of Karth space, a lone technician monitored ancient frequencies, mostly junk, mostly static. Then she saw it. A ping. Low bandwidth. Earth-style. Primitive. She adjusted the filters. The static cleared. Ren's voice. You can bury a battlefield. But you cannot bury the memory of what it cost you. We are the species you banned because you feared what we could do. And now, you remember. The transmission cut. But it wasn't the only one. Across 12 systems, similar messages appeared. Same voice. Same words reshuffled. Refracted. Multiplied. Some in different languages. Some in frequencies thought extinct. Old war probes. Lost colonies. Derelict satellites. They all woke. They all whispered the same name. Silas Rin. Back on Earth, panic bloomed. Defense Command couldn't explain it. Broadcasts flooded their own channels, Rin's voice echoing through every secure comm, every military station, every dormant AI. They tried to block it. They couldn't. The Grav Lance had killed the planet, but it had awakened the war. Admirals slammed fists on polished tables. We told them to contain it. They were careful, a general muttered. That's the problem. They were too precise. Because Earth hadn't lost control of its soldiers. The soldiers had lost interest in Earth. Some said Rin died with the planet. Others whispered of an escape. An old orbital launcher, a hijacked mining rig, a final ascension into the void. No one knew. Kira? She became a ghost. A whisper in the dark. Stories of her appeared in mercenary bars and abandoned barracks, of battlefield markers carved into stone, of a symbol etched into burnt metal. The Delta Mark. The galaxy didn't understand it, but it feared it. 50 years later, a cargo ship crashed on the edge of the old wreck line near where Delve Prime used to be. The recovery team went in. Only one came back, covered in blood, whispering the same words over and over. They're still out there, waiting. Across the galaxy, silence had once been peace. Now, silence was terror. No shots fired. No fleets launched. But everywhere change. Mercenary guilds disbanded overnight. Outer Rim colonies, once loyal to the Accord, withdrew quietly, disabling beacons and scrambling trade routes. Pirate lords surrendered without confrontation. In systems where once the sight of a human ship might have triggered alarms, now there was only retreat. They weren't fleeing the humans themselves. They were fleeing the idea of them, the memory of what they had become. In the deepest vaults of Accord intelligence, analysts dissected the voice clips, those scattered transmissions bearing Rin's words. They tried to track the source, to find the origin point, the launch time, the hardware. Nothing matched. No active human equipment. No authorized frequencies. No power signatures. It was as if the words had grown in the dark like fungi in the damp places between stars. And they spread. At a border checkpoint on a mining moon near Gorth's edge, a patrol ship intercepted an ancient Terran signal. Not a message. A map. Dozens of coordinates lighting up across the galactic plane, sites of long-forgotten skirmishes, dead colonies, abandoned strongholds. Each one marked by the same insignia. The Delta Mark. Soon, archaeological teams, both official and illicit, began to return with stories. Or didn't return at all. Those who did spoke of craters full of bones and shattered armor, of weapons still humming with charge decades later, of steel plates etched with the same lines. We are not soldiers. We are what happens when peace forgets what war taught it. On Earth, the panic reached a crescendo. In the sub-basements of the Global Defense Council, the mood had shifted from denial to desperation. They're destabilizing everything, a strategist muttered, without firing a shot. It's not just the words, another added. It's what people believe those words mean. No official trace of Rin existed anymore. His military records had been scrubbed. The entire last battalion had been reclassified as missing in action. Even the coordinates of Delve Prime were sealed behind 14 layers of clearance. But none of it mattered. Because across the stars, people were already listening. Not just to fear, to myth. In prisons, the worst war criminals now whispered prayers to stay far from any system bearing human relics. On black market comms, mercenaries refused contracts involving the ruins of Delve. In a mining station overrun by raiders, the attackers suddenly fled after finding a single wall carved with Earth's old military sigil. Not a shot fired. They left supplies untouched. Left the station empty. Because the humans weren't showing up anymore. And that was worse. One Accord patrol, stationed in the Kaler cluster, received a garbled emergency ping from a derelict civilian vessel drifting into a gravity well. The patrol approached cautiously, weapons armed. They found no life aboard. Only a single intact transmission looping in a corrupted voice file. You erased the battlefield, but you did not erase the memory. The words repeated, over and over. And as the patrol ship turned to leave, all 12 crew members swore they saw something in the reflection of the viewport, ash-gray armor, a fractured visor, eyes like winter storms. But there was nothing on scanners. Nothing on radar. Only that feeling. That presence. Ran had become something else now. Not a man. Not a captain. A shadow in the stories children weren't supposed to hear. A whisper across the deep void. A reckoning, riding on the back of silence itself. And somewhere in the outer reaches, on a moon that never had a name, an ancient observatory blinked to life after nearly a century offline. Its power cells drained, its memory cores corrupt. But the final log still played. It was her. Kira. Older now. Worn by time. One eye blind. The other still sharp as the blade at her back. She stood before a camera, the wind pulling at her hair. And she spoke. You buried the battlefield. You buried us with it. But now the stars remember. And when your children ask why the dark is never quiet, tell them we taught it to whisper. The feed cut. And across 12 Accord-aligned systems, communication arrays began flickering with signal bleed. Not just one voice now. Many. Male. Female. Mechanized. Synthetic. All repeating fragments. Ghosts of the Delta Mark. Across prison stations, slums, fractured colonies, one phrase began to take root like a seed under the skin. We are still here. Aboard the Accord Citadel, in the heart of the Lambda sector, the Crisis Council convened one final time. It wasn't protocol anymore. It was survival. The room was silent. No shouting now. No posturing. Just exhausted, ancient beings sitting in a circle beneath the glow of tactical overlays that no longer showed battle plans, just red zones. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Each marked with a single glyph. Delta, the Delta mark. Drex stood at the center, thinner than he once was. Sleepless. Haunted. It's over, he said softly, but not because we won. They're dead, someone muttered. We buried them. We collapsed the planet. Drex didn't even smile. And yet their voices are louder than ever. The Ark Ambassador leaned forward. If even one of them survived. They don't need to survive, Drex interrupted. Not physically. They become something else now. Legends. Worse, he said. A memory with teeth. Earth itself had gone quiet. Not silent, quiet. Its military branches refused to speak to Accord Command. Its defense networks went dark. Civilian transport was grounded, colonies recalled. The planet became an island behind walls of firewalls and orbital encryption. A signal was traced once to a remote asteroid belt on the edge of the old war corridor. The signal read, "Do not follow." No name, no encryption, but everyone knew who it was from. In the years that followed the collapse of Delve Prime, war changed. Armies grew cautious. Tactics shifted from overwhelming force to avoidance. The phrase "human zone, do not engage" became standard protocol on over 90 star charts. Some commanders argued for retaliation, but most refused. Not out of politics, out of terror. In the remains of dead systems, scavengers began finding evidence. Not just burnt weapons or charred insignias, but messages etched into walls, burned into the ground, broadcast in low-frequency whispers. You were warned. We do not forgive extinction. You erased the planet, but not what walked on it. The Delta mark spread like a virus, not just through comms or consoles, but into myth. It became part of language. In a slum on Beshtar 9, a mother warned her child, "Don't go beyond the ridge. The humans might hear you." In a pirate bar on Korath, mercenaries drank to silence, because saying their names invited echoes. And in military academies, young recruits learned to identify human tactics, not to counter them, but to avoid them. One training slide was circulated without official source. If you see them, it's already too late. 50 years after Delve Prime vanished from the stars, a research vessel operating in neutral space discovered a derelict human probe. No registry, no visible propulsion, just a black hole with a single message blinking in low-band code. We are what remains when you forget why peace matters. The probe self-destructed minutes later. No trace remained. But the signal was already repeating on 100 stations. We are still here. We are the fire you buried. And we remember. The galaxy had changed. No more was Earth a member of the Accord. No more did they send soldiers. They didn't need to. The humans had become something more enduring than presence. They had become fear. Some say Ren lives on, drifting beyond known space, watching. Some say Kira walks old battlefields, carving the Delta mark into rusted hulls. Others claim no one survived. But the transmission still echoes. Sometimes in the middle of deep space. Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes right before a fleet turns back from a war it thought it wanted. You banned us. Then you forgot why. Now, you remember.